Welcome to the From the Shadows podcast. I am your host, Shane Grove. And if you're watching us on video, don't be scared. This is not the Paranormal Portal podcast hosted by Brent Thomas. But sometimes he does slum it and hang out with us lesser known folk. But before we get to our special guests from the Paranormal Portal, I just want to remind everybody that if you want to follow us on social media, you can find us After the Shadows on Facebook or From the Shadows on Facebook. One's our podcast page, one's our forum page. You can follow me at Shane Grove Author on Instagram, or you can do the old-fashioned way and go to the website. From the Shadows podcast has a contact button. You can send me an email if you have an experience or something you want to talk about. I'll read it. I'll get back to you. And if you do want to come on the show, that's the best way to get a hold of us, or send us a message through any of those other places. And I do want to remind everybody that we do have a Patreon page that if you go become a member, you can get episodes early, commercial free, and there's some extra stuff every month. In fact, I just put up last week an extra midweek howl. So that's there. I'm just warning you, there's a reason it's on Patreon, though. So so don't play it in the car for the kids. Anyway, with that being said, I want to introduce to those who don't know our guest. He's probably one of the people we've known the longest in the podcast game here since we started. One of the guys that I have picked his brain nonstop for probably 4 or 5 years now. He's probably sick of it, but he still gives me the time of day. He just doesn't know any better. So welcome to the From the Shadows podcast, Mr. Brent Thomas of the Paranormal Portal.
Oh, thanks for having me, brother. It's good to be on, and it's great to have a chance to kick back and chat with you. Thanks, man.
No, I always look forward to talking to, there's a handful of people that I love the relationship I have with, obviously you. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the great Stacy Brown. He's always fun to talk
He's
to.
A great guy. Yeah.
Wes has done a lot for both of us. Some guy named Wes Germer. He's done a lot to help promote our shows and give us advice and stuff. But that group of people, they've been great. You guys are all great too. Mark Muncy, I got to mention Mark Muncy too. He's great. I'm sure you've had Mark on as a guest. No?
I haven't. No, I never have.
Oh my gosh. There you go. You need to have Mark Muncy on. He is fantastic. He's such a wealth of knowledge, especially all things Florida. And now he's branching out. So it's great. So Brent, tell our listeners a little bit about your show and what you what you guys do over there in the Paranormal Portal.
Well, the Paranormal Portal is just kind of all things paranormal. And that means like UFOs, Bigfoot, ghosts, spirits, cryptids, strange phenomena like the Mandela effect and time slips and all that stuff. So it's kind of a big umbrella of topic and subject matter. But it started out actually as an internet radio show in 2016 and on Truth Frequency Radio. And it then spider-webbed out to YouTube, where I've done live streams since 2017. And then after that, my origin story is actually pretty much identical to Tony's, Tony Merkel of the Confessionals, because I don't know somehow, and I don't know how, but I'd been a fan of Wes's for years and had listened to Sasquatch Chronicles when I was grinding away in a cubicle, doing web development and stuff. And so I started doing the shows and had been doing it for a while. And then I would mention Wes sometimes on the show. Well, somehow Wes happened to be in my audience checking it out, and I didn't even know he was there. and suddenly I had phone lines, and suddenly my phone rings. Hi, this is Wes. I was like, it was one of those moments. It was like, no, you're not Wes. But he called in and we had a great time and we had a lot of laughs. And then after the show, he messaged me on Facebook. He's like, dude, why isn't this a podcast? And I'm like, I don't know. And he said, well, it should be. And I was like, okay. So he was really instrumental in helping me form what became the Paranormal Portal podcast as well. So basically the Paranormal Portal now is, I still do those live streams, and they're just kind of paranormal variety shows. I cover as many topics as I can throughout the course of 2 hours, streaming on Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific time on YouTube, Rumble, and Twitch at the same time. Twitch is kind of an experiment. Nothing's really happening there, but I'm just throwing out the umbrella just wherever, if somebody finds it, that's great. But the podcast is generally me speaking with people that have had experiences 90% of the time. That's, my guests. And it's fascinating because I truly do love hearing people's experiences, because I think, you can glean a lot of information from those things that they've seen and seeing it through their eyes, and they're first tier witnesses. They were there, they saw it. So I find that incredibly powerful and compelling. But I also interview, like authors and researchers and media personalities in the field. So it's just been a lot of fun. And that did start out as just audio, and you can find it on all the platforms, wherever you find, Into the Shadows, or From the Shadows, rather, you will find the Paranormal Portal. We're all over the place out there. And so, but I've just more recently, in the last, 7 or 8 episodes, started doing video as well. And I upload the video podcasts to YouTube and Rumble, and then BitChute as well. So they're out there, and that's just what I've been doing. And I was a very late bloomer in life. I've done many, many different things through my careers, but I never felt like I'd found what I wanted to do. But now that I'm doing this, it's like, oh, I found it. I'm home. This is it. This is what I've always been looking for. And so it's just been an amazing venture, brother.
I feel that same way every day on the mail route. Like, what am I doing? But I will say this. I was always amazed at how much stuff you did live on YouTube. And I'm just, because we all know how difficult it is to create the content, get it out there for people to consume, and stuff that people want to consume. And then just to do 1 or 2 shows a week, and you're doing all these live shows for 2 hours at a time. And I will say, if anybody is not watching this on video, you are first of all, thanks, because now I'm not as embarrassed, but Brent's studio game is pretty top notch. Oh. I mean, the stuff you've got going on, it's just, the aesthetic is wonderful. You deserve to be on video.
Well, that's why I did all this. I could just be in a room with walls if it was just an audio podcast. But I had started out doing these, after the internet radio, started out doing the live streams. And so that's why this still happens. But I'll tell you what, there was 2 years where I was doing 10 shows a week. And it was 7 live streams a week, 1 every night, and then 3 podcast episodes. And I'm here to tell you, that was a freaking marathon. But that was the first 1.5 years of doing podcasts, and then on top of the 7 days a week on YouTube. And it was a really cool time. But I just realized that I'm just getting really tired after 2 years of it. It's like so much to do. So I cut back on the live streams too. I think I cut back to like 3 or 4 or 5, and then I cut back to just 3. And this has been a good number for me because it's maintainable, and I really enjoy doing them. I would never want to cut them out completely, because I really do have a really amazing core audience that's just been with me for years. People come and go, and there's sometimes the audience is bigger or a little bit smaller, but there's always that amazing core of people there, and it's really become kind of a family. They're just a bunch of marvelous people. So, and you can find the YouTube channel at youtube.com/Paranormal Portal, and the same on Rumble, wherever you watch streaming. So yeah, I'd love to have you come check out the shows, but I forgot where I was going with this, but just basically that, again, it's that old saying, you find what you love doing, you'll never work a day in your life. And I don't feel like, I know I'm busy, and I agree with you. The stress can be astronomical, but I still love doing this, So it's not as much of a sacrifice when you're doing it because you love it versus doing it because you have to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you mentioned the fan base, and it's the same. It's the same with us. Is
Mhm.
we have like a really good core group of fans. People come and go based on recommendations, and they'll check in. And sometimes people don't get it,
Right.
and you're like, well,
Not for
listen,
everybody.
yeah, listen to some more, or yeah, you're right. I'm not for everybody,
Yeah.
but the people that really and we see them. They comment, they like stuff, they send me messages, and they send me messages like some really cool stuff. Like I've got people that send me stuff almost every day, and I laugh so hard at some of the Instagram videos they send me and stuff. And they're just great. They're great people, and they support us, and that's I think, other than us loving the subject matter and like loving to hear these stories and trying to figure out what is going on in some of these, which we may never do. But
Right.
it's to know that people enjoy it and are looking forward to go on this journey with us every couple times a week. You know.
It is. It's amazing, and it's such a heartwarming thing to know when you get those emails, when you get those comments and stuff. It's like, it's already an honor to do a show. I don't know how else to say that other than it really feels special to me every time I get to do a show. But it's even so much more magnified when you're hearing from people that make it a point to tune in to hear what you have to say. It's like, wow, they actually, people actually care what I got to say. It's amazing. And it's such a rush. But, I mean, these shows, all of these shows we are absolutely, how's the word? I mean, we are only what we are because of the people that support what we're doing.
Yeah.
And these people are just incredible, and it's absolutely a blessing. So very,
it's definitely a blessing to, because we interview a lot of, like you do, a lot of eyewitnesses, people that have experienced this stuff. And when you talk to people and they've never told it to anybody, or they've only told it to one or two other people, and they choose you to do it. Okay. And I can look through, I listen to Wes's stuff. I check your stuff out, Shannon LeGros stuff, Bobo and
Cliff.
Cliff and those guys. None of us are interviewing the same people.
Right.
Like we may be interviewing the same authors and the same experts,
Sure.
So-called experts and stuff, but the eyewitnesses, we're not interviewing the same eyewitnesses. We all, like, somehow they all come, and to then sit back and realize, like, we're almost at episode 500. You got to be close or way more than that. I mean, I don't know.
No, I think about the same.
About the same.
Yeah.
And Wes is well over 1,000.
Yeah.
And it's like so it just leads you to see how many people have these type of experiences out there. And we're just a handful of the paranormal shows that are out there. There's a lot of other ones that are out there. They're just not, they're in a different little sphere of bumping into each other, you know what I'm saying? And I've been on some of those shows, and it's just crazy to think that how many people have different experiences, and how many people have yet to come out and share their experiences. That's the other thing,
That's exactly what I was thinking about. It's like, because most people are incredibly reluctant to talk about it. Like you said, so many people have never talked about it, but then they're doing it on a show of all places, which is incredibly brave, but they must, really believe in what you're doing. And it's an incredible honor that they choose, our platforms to do that, to bare their souls. But it's also really rewarding when, you hear those people that have been carrying this for maybe 30, 40 years, and finally they let it out. And then after you're done recording, you hear like, oh my God, it feels so good to finally have talked about this. I feel like I just put down a pile of bricks that I've been carrying for generations. It's like, wow, that's amazing. And it is really a sacred thing when you think about it. But I tell you, the beauty of people coming forward and sharing their stories is that it really is self-perpetuating, because somebody out there is going to hear it and go, wow, that's very similar to something I went through. I should probably reach out and see if they want to hear about what I saw, and it really does embolden more people to come forward. And honestly, since these things are not something that we can actively study, they aren't subject to active study or, real rigorous scientific, procedure. All we have primarily, outside of some physical evidence that pops up, is these anecdotal reports, anecdotal experiences. But and that's funny. This keeps coming up lately. I did a presentation at a conference in Montana about, and this is one of the things I touched on, is that witness testimony is the strongest evidence we have right now. And it's not that everybody comes and tells you the whole truth, or they might embellish, they might just be full of it, and you don't know. But when you've heard enough of a body of reports, you can see the patterns, you can see the consistencies from these, and you can kind of use that as a litmus test as you hear more of them. And then it does create a rudimentary behavioral profile of these beings. Like, say, for instance, Bigfoot. There's thousands of reports of people and their experiences, and you can kind of draw some pretty powerful conclusions from this body of reports. Now, that's not unlike what an FBI profiler does in trying to figure out what's going on with, like, serial killers, these incredibly intelligent but diabolical bastards out there that are, hurting people. But they can make predictive models based upon this body of evidence that they've collected, through years. And I think that is very much the same with these reports of these cryptids and such, that through observed behaviors, we can make some kind of predictive modeling and figure out better how to research or attempt to research them, because we can figure out what are their triggers, what's drawing them in, what were these people doing that they found very interesting and came in to watch, or what were they doing that was really pissed them off that they felt like they had to throw stuff. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah. So I think that, a lot of people scoff at witness testimony, like, witnesses are unreliable. And it's like, yeah, maybe a witness is, but not all of them. There's no way all of them are. So I think it's a very powerful tool that we have, and it really doesn't get enough appreciation. So when people do come forward, every person that comes forward stands to teach us something new about this stuff that we absolutely have very, very little idea about, And
it's, so you talking about that just reminded me of something. And for our audience members who do not remember the first time we had you on the show 400 episodes ago, you told a story about being up in a cabin and with the binoculars and stuff, or the infrared stuff. Okay, so I'll let you tell that story, but I want to say, so that story's always stuck with me, and I'm a regular watcher, as are most, probably a lot of our listeners probably watch Skinwalker Ranch on TV.
Oh, sure.
And they're doing experiments out there, and they're shooting off rockets or something to get responses through this one part of the ranch. And they discovered there's things in the sky that can only be seen with infrared cameras and things. And I look at my wife, I'm like, oh my God, I've heard this before from Brent on the Paranormal Portal. He told me this like 4 or 5 years that he had this same experience. So I want you to share with our listeners, like, what that experience was, because then your experience coincides with what they did in an experiment and had the same result.
Right. Well, okay. So what was going on was I was working for a company doing some marketing and other development and such. And so I was living in Minnesota at the time. I'm currently now in the North Tip of Idaho, but I was living there and I was working remotely, but the company ended up moving to the north of Idaho, which is why I eventually came here. But I was living in Minnesota at this time, And the owner of the company was having some contract, advertising negotiations with some other, platforms that he was trying to work out and find some contractual agreements for sponsorships and stuff. So he's like, you know what? Why don't you just come out here and, come out for that? And I was like, well, fantastic. Sure. I'd love to. And so he brought me out here, and I was up here, and he said, I didn't get you a hotel. They had bought, he and his wife at that time had bought a house that was in the mountains. It's just all out by itself in the mountains, on this basically a logging road. There's other seasonal cabins out there. There's a couple of round the clock or around the calendar houses up there, but they're very dispaced and nothing close. So he said, you know what? The house is ready. We haven't moved in yet, but why don't you just stay up there in this mountain house? And I was like, well, okay, twist my arm. I'll stay up in the mountains. That's fine. So, and he brought me up there, and he kind of showed me around and stuff. And while we were looking around, he goes, yeah, check this out. I got these night vision binoculars. You should see these. And I was like, oh, cool. Now, I was really excited to use those one of those nights. I was thinking, well, that'll be something to do while I'm sitting up here all by myself up in the mountains, without much else to do. So we got through that the first day's, negotiations and stuff. And it got to be the end of the day. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going up to the house. So I drove, and it's about 25 minutes out of town. And again, it's just way up in the mountains in this mountain valley. And so I went up there, and I got up there, and it was pretty dark. And I was standing outside. I was going, wow, look at the night sky, because there's no light pollution and stuff. And I'm really appreciating this. It's like, wow, hey, I'm going to get those night vision binoculars, because I'd always heard if you ever get the chance, you should look at the night sky with generation 1 night vision, because I don't know about the other generations, but generation 1 night vision is what these binoculars had, because apparently in our galaxy, there's a lot of red stars that we just don't see with our naked eye. So I was like, I want to see what that looks like. It was dark. I went inside, grabbed the night vision binoculars, and I'm out there. And these aren't like 20 power or anything. They're only 5 power. They're 4 or 5 power binoculars. So it's not like it's magnifying a whole bunch. It's just giving you this night vision view of the sky. And sure enough, I looked up, turned them on, and I was like, whoa. All of a sudden, you can't even recognize constellations. It's just incredible. And I sincerely would recommend anybody, if you ever get the opportunity, to look at the night sky with night vision, because it's like you will see millions of new stars that are popping up, and it looks like geometric patterns of stars. It's just incredible. So I'm just up there gawking away and just having a good time, and I'm looking up. And then I was, just realizing, hey, I got night vision. It's all dark in this valley. There's a little bit of ambient light. There's a bit of a moon, and the night, after your eyes adjust, you can kind of see around you, but it's up in the mountains. It's still dark. So I'm playing around with the night vision, and I said, well, I'm going to look at the other slope opposite of me. And I'm looking over, and I'm like, God, I can see all the trees. I can see their branches and stuff. This is really cool. I'm like a kid with a new toy and having a good time. And then I looked down the driveway, and sure enough, I could see all the way down what looked like a dark pit without them. Suddenly was just illuminated all the way down. This is really cool. And then I decided, well, I'm going to look at the stars again. And I pan up. And I get up above the tree line, and this one big conifer or pine tree, some version of pine. I'm not a tree person, so I don't know. They're just big pine-like trees. And about 30 feet above this pine tree is, no kidding, a freaking flying saucer, and it's sitting there hovering. And here's the thing. I've always been a believer in this stuff. I've always believed we can't be alone. These reports, there's got to be something to this. We're being visited. But I'd never seen anything. My whole life I'd been looking at the night sky, never saw anything that I would say could have been even a UFO. So I was like, how come I never see anything? Well, there it was. And it was just sitting there floating about 30 feet above this pine tree, absolutely silently. Not a noise, nothing. It's a flying saucer. But now here's the interesting thing. A lot of times you see the flying saucer pictures, and they're like one upper plate pressed up against another one, and you got a point on the edge. This wasn't that at all. There was a gap between them. And in this gap were these panels going around this craft, whatever the hell it was, and they're all flashing lights in like a chasing marquee pattern, like on the old movie theaters, mm-hmm. or on maybe Broadway or something. You know what I mean? Just that chasing light pattern. That's what these panels were doing around this craft. And so it's flashing light. And I'm like, oh my God, you know, and I'm having this real epiphany moment, like they're real. They are real. I'm seeing it. This is here. And I was just blown away, absolutely blown away. And I'm like, oh my God, I got to see this with my own eyes. I lower the binoculars, looking in the same place, and I can see the treetop. I can see the stars. There's nothing there. There's nothing there. Now, remember, this thing's flashing lights and stuff. I'm like, oh my God, it must have just sped away that quick. Oh my God. And then I raised the binoculars. It's still there. It hadn't moved. I lower the binoculars. It's not there. I raise the binoculars. It's there. And I'm doing this like, oh my God. And I realized they can hide. They can hide from us. They can make it so we can't see them, like a cloak or something, you know. And it was just like, you know, this moment. And then I'm like, oh my God. So I'm just looking and looking and just sucking this in. And then it dawns on me, like, I'm about the only thing going on in this whole valley, and I'm here looking at them, and they're sitting up there, not going anywhere. Chances are they're looking at me. You know, you get the willies like, oh, okay, this is real enough. And so I just shut them off, went inside, shut and locked every door, and just paced for hours. And I was just like, oh my God, I'm peeking out the blinds, looking for the little men coming in to, you know, I figured I didn't need any probing or anything, Shane. So,
well, you know, because locking the door on a cabin probably will keep out a civilization that has figured out how to cloak themselves as they float above a tree. I mean, you were probably perfectly safe. There was no chances they were getting in.
I wasn't working with a full faculty at this point, Shane. I was just thinking, I'm locking it. Screw it. We're going to have to work their way in here. So,
but so some of the stuff that has come to light, especially from the military, and some of those videos where the stuff is only seen through night vision or infrared or you know, whatever, and it really then hammers on, because you told this story long before the Tic Tac video came out, okay? And when all that stuff started coming, I'm like, oh my gosh. So when you hear it from somebody, you know, just a normal Joe having this experience, and then you hear professionals in a job that you know you're supposed to trust, and they come out and say, hey, this is what happened, and then you see it on the TV show, who knows, but but I like to think Dr. Taylor, I like to think Travis Taylor's a stand-up guy. I don't know.
Yeah, he seems to. Yeah,
he seems to be. Another guy I can't get on the show. I can't find his number.
But he's tough. Even I mean, if you go to the Vernal conference, you'll see him. But he kind of comes in and out like a rock star. I mean, God knows the guy's probably busy as hell, and they're usually still filming by the time that Vernal conference happens. But the whole cast of people that I have met, like Thomas Winterton and Dragon and stuff, are wonderful people. Really are very nice people.
Well. Now, speaking of somebody who rubs shoulders with the who's who of the paranormal, I was looking at some of, you know, in preparation for this interview, I was looking, I made notes of some of the people that you've talked to here recently. And I mean, it's a who's who of paranormal. It's like this Discovery Channel is what I'm looking at under the paranormal. So tell me a little bit about, I saw you got to talk to Dave Schrader.
Yeah, Dave's an excellent guy. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he seems like I always loved everything he did. He seems like a real straightforward guy. Like, how is it to get to talk to, you know, him and what he kind of believes is going on?
You know, it was really neat, and I had seen his shows through the years, and have enjoyed them. I always thought he's you know, seemed like a real straight shooter. Like, you know, he's just kind of no nonsense. He takes this stuff very seriously, but in person, he's just a sweetheart of a guy. I mean, he really is. He's just a very kind and warm person, and we had a few laughs through that interview, but incredibly knowledgeable. You know, he's one of those people that have been at this for decades and worked and talked with a lot of the big names. He had Darkness Radio. He was filled in for Coast to Coast. I mean, he's done so much of that interviewing. He's been on both sides of this, you know, for a long time. but an incredibly knowledgeable guy, an incredibly kind guy. In fact, I've, messaged him here and there. Hey, what's the best way of going about getting in touch with, some of these people? And he'll send me contacts and stuff. Just a wonderful, wonderful guy. So, I would really recommend, if you get a chance to have him on your show, do it, because he's just one of those guests. You could throw him any curveball and he would be able to just, hit it out of the park. He's just really, really sharp and very knowledgeable. He's got a newer book out. The title escapes me, but if you're not familiar with Dave Schrader, you can check out his podcast. It's Paranormal 60 is his podcast, and it's wonderful. And they do streaming as on YouTube and Facebook, but it's definitely worth checking out. He's just a really cool guy. I really enjoyed it. And honestly, full disclosure, I had seen Dave at the Vernal Conference in Utah, which the next one's coming up in September, which we'll be going to. But I just thought maybe this guy's one of those ego guys. I just kind of, you get that idea of some of these people like, just in love with themselves, I'm sure, but I'll go say hi. And so I went up and said hi to him. And then, we just kind of got to messaging and knowing each other a little bit. I wouldn't say that we're, great friends, but I would enjoy his friendship because he just is that sincere and just a very real person.
Yeah. And you don't, and sometimes when some of these guys have TV shows, guys and girls have TV shows, and you don't know how much are they really knowledgeable on the subject? Do they live and breathe this subject? Or are they just somebody that is interesting and we can build a show around them and they can kind of fake it till they make it kind of deal. And I mean, that's not, I don't want to, as I segue into the next person, Ronnie LeBlanc, I don't want people to think I'm saying fake it till they make it. But he comes across his show that he's on seems to get really maligned sometimes by the people who call themselves real Bigfoot enthusiasts. And I know he is super enthusiastic about the subject and thinks a little bit outside the box.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of friends with somebody he used to do a show with, Matty Blake, that he used to do the what the heck was that show? But it was based in the East. They had a show. Oh gosh, now I'm blanking. But they had a show together. So, he's a guy that I've messaged back and forth about coming on and stuff, and it just sometimes it hasn't worked out. But so when you have guys on like that, like, how do you dig into the TV show and that sort of stuff? Because they have to be aware of what is being said and what is thought of about some of the stuff that comes up on the show.
Well, I don't ever try to whenever I'm interviewing somebody, I don't ever try to line them up for the shot kind of thing, because I just figure, my God, especially the Bigfoot community, it's so cutthroat, and there's so many people that are dealing with their own egos and their jealousies and stuff. And so they'll just do everything they can to trash people. And that's severely unfortunate because, it's honestly the only way the needle's going to get moved forward is if people can really come together and figure it out and allow people their differences and yet just focus on the end game. But so I the only thing that I really brought up about the show Expedition Bigfoot with Ronnie is what is it like? Because obviously we all hear the rumors of it's so heavily edited and stuff. And I said, so Ronnie, what is the difference between doing the show yourself and then seeing the finished result? And he said, well, there is some timing issues that come up. He said, I'm a real stickler for that. And sometimes that part is hard because in this course of editing, but he said, everything that's represented there really happened. And Ronnie is, he's a great guy. He's got a great sense of humor too. But he seems like a real straight shooter as well. He's not you always got to wonder, because we all hear the stories. Well, you can't believe nothing on TV, and maybe that's true to some degree. But in defense of the cast, I don't know the producers or anything like that, or the people that are putting the actual finished episodes out there, but they're doing. I mean, I know Russ real well. I've known him for years, and then Ronnie and a little bit of Maria. I've met her a few times. Just all wonderful people. But they're so sincere. Like, they're doing it because they really want the answers. They really want to find something and help to substantiate this. And I think they're exceptionally conscientious. And but after their part is done, they really have no control of what happens then. So. But it was nice to hear from Ronnie that, look, other than some things being out of sequence and stuff, and some, things do get edited down, obviously, because, nothing's happening every second. So, things get chopped and cut, and decisions are made that aren't there for. Some things have been cut that he said he would have liked to have seen included, because to him it really represented some amazing evidence, but he didn't get that executive decision. So, I mean, it was mostly a discussion about that, and talking to him about, his Monsterland books. He's got 2 of them out there.
Monsterland. That was the name of the podcast.
Oh, okay. Oh, very cool. Honestly, I when I met Ronnie at the conference, and actually conferences are such a great way to network. That's why I love going to them. But, I saw he was selling these books, Monsterland. I was like, wow. I'll support that. I'll buy his book. And so it was kind of funny because, he had never, really met me before this. And so I think we said hello one other time the year before, but I was like, hey, I want to buy a book. And I said, well, you sign it. You go, sure. What do you want in there? And I said, to Brent with all my love, Ronnie. And he started laughing. He's like, are you serious? And I'm like, yeah, put that in there. And so he did. He wrote it down. And then I was like, oh, this is cool. And we both had a laugh over that. And then I got back to my booth, and I sat down and opened it up. And was like, oh, that's cool. And I looked, and he wrote to Brad. I was like, oh. So I went back over there, and I'm like, hey, Ronnie. And I opened it up and then pointed my name tag. He goes, oh. So he grabbed another book, and I'm like, no, you scribble that out and then write it right. He's like, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, that's a memory. I said, I want that memory. And so we had a great laugh of it. And then I came. So at the end of that day, I came back the next day, and on my table, waiting for me was a Ronnie LeBlanc picture autographed to Brad from Ronnie.
That's fantastic. Yeah. See, and he has when you have a sense of humor about yourself, that's the best. That's the best. And and I mean, and kind of what I'm asking is like that. I mean, that's the elephant in the room. That's what he's well known for, is you gotta ask. You don't, like you said, you don't want to put people in a bad spot. And
sure,
we all know, when you do creative stuff and there's somebody that ultimately is the next gatekeeper of it, what is good stuff, they may not think is going to make great television or great whatever. And even if it is evidence that for the real people that are into the subject, that would probably make them, oh, eureka, it's not going to be sexy enough for the regular guy sitting there eating a slice of pizza, just going, well, I hope they catch that.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool, but again, I really adore all 3 of those people. I think they're wonderful people, and it's unfortunate that they catch so much grief. But you think about, like, even finding Bigfoot, that show I think takes more grief than any other show prior. But I'm here to tell you, while they probably were never going to find Bigfoot with their production means, having big crews and lights and sound guys following everybody around, sure, you're probably not going to find Bigfoot. But one thing that was huge that show really did was get the conversation started and making it mainstream. And they excelled at it. And so that, no matter what you think of the show, and I like the show, I watched the show religiously back in the day just because they would talk about things like tracks and how they're made, and they would talk about things that people attribute to Bigfoots, like, tree breaks and structures and things like that I'd never heard before watching Finding Bigfoot. So I learned a lot from, listening to those guys talk about it, and then to hear those town halls that they would have where people would tell their stories. It was like, wow, that's really fascinating. They figure out where they're going to go, and then they'd go do it. So yeah, it wasn't the format to actually find Bigfoot, but in a sense, they found the audience for Bigfoot, and people found that it was okay to talk about Bigfoot. Like it was normalized now. And so I think that, these shows, no matter how much they take on the chin, they're getting people looking for answers and asking the questions that maybe they just kind of, put on the blinders and ignored before. And now you can't drive around without seeing Bigfoot stickers on cars and stuff, right? Now you can't drive around without seeing Bigfoot stickers on cars and stuff, right?
Well, and I think you make a really good point there is so that show gets everybody talking about it, even more so the people that have never had a Bigfoot experience, may never have don't understand. But what then it does, it allows the people who have had the experiences. Yeah. And it created that space for podcasts to exist. Oh, sure. And podcasts are the next step in that, where there's a little more anonymity to coming on a radio show and talking about it, and knowing that most of the people that listen are people that truly believe or have had experiences, and it gives them the forum to share. So it kind of like that's like the McDonald's, the Finding Bigfoot's like the McDonald's. Everybody goes through there. Not everybody is going to go there on date night. And I like to think that people then who really are connoisseurs of hamburgers and French fries are going to come to us and take it to the next level, because they have the permission. And what always cracks me up, and I don't know how much attention you pay to comments and stuff, because that's one thing Wes always says. He goes, I don't read any of that crap. But nothing I enjoy more than somebody who has nothing nice to say. Yeah. Okay. And they get on and they rip on a person, on a guest or something. And I always enjoy saying, well, hey, give me a link to your podcast so I can go check out your podcast. Or I say, man, that's amazing that you can say something like that about somebody you don't know. Yeah. And you know what happens is 99% of the time those people remove their comments. And it's like, and I just am like, come on, people. Yeah. If you don't like something about what's going on here, don't listen. Right. You don't need to make people feel bad about having an experience. And that goes about everything, I mean, just everything in life that people are ashamed to talk about. Right. Because there's always somebody there to sit in judgment and knock them down and say that didn't, or belittle them or make them feel less than. And I mean, and that's like I said, that's what I enjoy about like all the group of people that I've got to know. Everybody handles it with really a lot of dignity and class, and makes people feel super comfortable to tell their stuff. And the other, now we kind of talked about this before, so
let me do this quick.
Oh, go ahead.
I do respond to those messages sometimes. Sometimes I drill them right back, but I did start a segment on my live stream called Comments from the Cheap Seats. So when I get those, I figure, here's the thing. I figure if people are going to take enough time to be a dick publicly about something, then I'm going to use my resources to make them famous. So I highlight their comment on my live streams, and, I set it up, and then and usually with my snarky reply, and I never get responses after that. Never get any response again from those people. It's like,
no. And we used to have this guy that, and this was a guy who contacted me because he thought he had something going on his property. Okay. And so I included him in a group text with me and the judge. And we both were talking to him, and he'd send us these pictures. And I think he eventually reached out to you at one time. And you might not. Okay. And he kept sending us like these pictures, and we finally are like we don't think there's anything here. Okay. But the judge says, hey, look, we'll come out and we'll do an investigation. And I'm like, dude, we're not going out and doing, I'm telling the judge and stuff. I'm like, we're not doing an that's not what we do. And he goes, listen, it's not real. This guy's is just talking. Okay. He just wants attention. And sure enough, the guy's like, oh no, I don't own this property and I can't have people. And we're just like, well, there's not really anything we can do. Okay. But thanks for sending us stuff. And then he texts us like at 2:00 in the morning. And and of course we're not answering.
Right.
Okay. There's only one person I answer at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning when they text me, and that's Tanya Tucker. Okay. It's not this guy from,
right.
It's not this guy. So he got mad. It was like we were talking to a schoolgirl, like no offense to schoolgirls, which I don't think we have any of those listening, but it was, so then he starts getting on and just lambasting us every chance he gets. And finally I'm like, what? I'm like, dude, you got to stop this. Oh, quit bullying me. You're bullying me online. I'm like, wait a second. What are you doing? You're like bullying us. Like, we can't. And he finally gave up because Nita, our social media queen, dug up a whole bunch of stuff that this guy had done to other people and pointed out to him like, listen, dude.
I kind of wonder what happened to that guy. I'm glad that he chose silence now. Believe me.
Maybe we were completely wrong, and that really was a dog man in that trail cam, and he met his ultimate demise, and we missed out on the story of the century. I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know.
That's the other side of it, though. I mean, you try to give everybody a sympathetic ear, and I know you and I, in dealing with this individual. I took all kinds of time to respond to him and make sure that I was, answering as much as I could, but it was just never enough. And it was just like, okay, there comes a point where, you can't be somebody's, personal Google, like you're going to have to kind of sort this out on your own. I can't be your search engine on this stuff. I don't have time, and it's unfortunate, but there again, you're right. There are those people that will monopolize every second you have if you let them. So.
Yeah, and like I said, it started out genuinely. Yes. We wanted to help him, and when it became apparent that there really wasn't much going on, and like I said, I believe everybody. When everybody comes to me, I believe them until they prove me otherwise.
Sure.
And and so it was just turned really ugly real quick, and it's like, dude, okay. But on to a better subject. I want you to share like this. When I saw you talking about this episode coming up that you just recently had, I want to know how you got the distinct honor of interviewing the great George Noory. Now, you don't have to go into behind the scenes details for sure, but What was that like? Because George Noory has to be a hero to somebody who does something like this.
It was kind of the Hail Mary pass, to be honest with you. It was like, who can I get on the show? And I was just, all of a sudden it was just like George Noory. What about that? And then I was like, well, maybe I can get on Coast to Coast. Initially, my idea was maybe I could appear on there as a guest and talk about some of this stuff. But then I was like, a lot of people do that. Because it's, the show's been around for years and years and years. But I was like, wouldn't it be something if I could get him to come on my show? And so I just cold reached out to him. I was able to find his personal phone number, which I thought.
Do not message Brent Thomas and ask him for George Noory's personal number. Okay, do not.
I would never ever give it out. But I'm here. I just was like, I'm gonna shoot the shot. I'm gonna shoot my shot. So I just messaged him And he's surprisingly enough, he responded right away and said, well, really busy. Message me. I messaged him in March originally, and he messaged me and said, I'll get back to me end of May. It's like, okay. So I was like, oh, I think is he considering it, or is he just putting it downfield so he can deal with it later, that kind of thing. So I wasn't sure how that was going to roll. And then was it May 29th? I was like, oh, it's the end of May. Message him again. He's like, well, how about the week of June 14th? And I was like, okay, how about, and I looked at my calendar. I'm like, how about the 13th? Okay, 4 p.m. And boom, that was it. Now, as I was explaining to you before we were recording, I was fully expecting one of those, how'd you get my number? What's going on here? Honest to God, he never brought it up. And I was like, oh, thank God. So it was like divine providence that I didn't piss the guy off, But, I made the call, and, we got it all set up and, having him on. And I wasn't sure, based on his responses, am I irritating him, or is he just putting up with me just because he's, trying to be a nice guy, or, am I really annoying the hell out of him? But once I started talking to him, I was really at ease, because he's such a warm and engaging person, and made me feel comfortable. Now, I'm here to tell you, I've interviewed a ton of people through the years, and celebrities and otherwise, but I was nervous about this one. I was truly nervous about this, because George is someone that's interviewed thousands of people, thousands and thousands of people, starting, with his St. Louis radio show, and then finally going to Coast as the weekend guy, to finally taking over for Art. And then his other shows, Beyond Belief with George Noory, and the other appearances on many, many other medias. And I was like, God, this guy's talked to everybody. He's good friends with like George Knapp and everyone. So I'm like, oh, I just don't want to look like an idiot. This is my chance to talk to George Noory. But we had an exceptional discussion. He really made it comfortable and put me at ease, and we had a great discussion, and it was just so cool. I really enjoyed it, because I wasn't, again, we get back to, who are these people really? Because you see a version of them, but you're never sure, is that them, or is this a character they're playing? But that is George. He's just that nice guy, and he's engaging, warm, and a good sense of humor, but another person that's incredibly well thought and well informed, and has some really good positions on a lot of stuff. We ended up talking primarily about UFO phenomena, but that's, something that he's very well known for, and something he's been interested since, his whole life. So we had some great discussions. We touched on a couple other subjects through the discussion, but I would love the opportunity to have him back, because it was just one of those iconic moments. And, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a big believer in, well, this name is really going to move the show, and this name is really going to make me a household name. I never really thought of it in that regards, but it was just such a neat experience, not maybe an experiment too, because I'd never talked to him before, but it turned out really well. And he's a really, really wonderful guy.
And now, as an interviewer, I would be remiss if I didn't ask this. Did you end the conversation with, and George, if you ever have a guest cancel and you need somebody to fill in, you've got my number.
I didn't. I know, but I just didn't want to. I was already like holding the golden egg, and I didn't want to make an omelet right there with it. It's like, it's going to be great.
You need a better agent. What are you talking about? The agent?
I need an agent. Right. I need a lot of things, a personal assistant and an agent, but so far I got me, and that's it. So interviewing George, I mean, that has to, do you rank that up there as like the top of the heap, or is he just second behind every time you've had Wes on the show? I'm just asking. I love talking to Wes. Wes is, I wouldn't even have a podcast if it wasn't for the guy. And he's been so incredibly helpful. And available, and you know, and he it's actually really neat, my relationship with Wes. You know, there'll be periods where we don't talk for, you know, quite a while. He's just exceptionally busy and has a lot of things going on. I'm pretty busy, but, you know, sometimes we'll run things by each other. Like I'll send him an intro I'm working on. What do you think? And, you know, he'll give me his feedback, and sometimes he'll send me things to go, what do you think of this? Or have a listen to this. And it's really neat. You know, I just am so grateful for the friendship that I have with Wes, and all that has taught me, because he's, you know, he's really been a great sounding board and mentor, you know, through all of this. And I don't think my show would be where it is without, you know, his help, you know.
Oh, I feel the same way. And one of the funniest was the times we connect, I'm usually out on the mail route, and and we'll text something. And the one day I had to stop, and I started laughing out loud. And he started talking about the show we have in the middle of the week, the Midweek House.
Uh-huh.
And he goes, you know, when I first saw you were doing that, he goes, I thought, who's going to listen to a couple of idiots just talking? He goes, but you know what? It's fantastic. He goes, I listen to it every week. I don't even listen to your paranormal part every week. I listen to that every week. And then he's like, starts giving me like ideas for shows for us to do with the Howler. And then, and we did combine on one, you know, he did, because Wes, and we talked about either doing another show, him and Merkel are doing another show. And I think in the closet, he is jealous of the fact that we get to do everything. We just don't have to do Bigfoot. Sure. Because I think he truly loves everything paranormal.
Oh, he does.
And he loves talking about the stuff, and he loves history. He's a huge history buff. And, and I think he takes pleasure in like, the fact that, number one, he'll do one of those like little history things on his show, and half his fans want to burn his house, his castle down. And but we did a really cool episode. He did something on this famous Baron. I can't think of the last name.
Yeah.
And so we took that and played it at the beginning of our show, and then we went on and did a lot of research on that, and he gave us a lot of notes on that and helped. And it was fun because it was, you know, we were collaborating with him, and it was a great story that a lot of people probably didn't know, that are outside of the really scholarly study of World War II. If you're just a casual like history buff, you probably didn't know that story. And it was
I didn't know it. And I'm not even a history buff, but that's an amazing story. That was cool.
You can't tell me that wouldn't be a great movie.
Oh my God. He did such a great job putting that together too. It really sucked you in with all the sounds and stuff put in there. And then the music, it was like, wow, he's so good at what he does. I mean, he really is phenomenal at this craft. Yeah.
Yeah. And it gives you something to shoot for.
Yeah. Well, yeah. He keeps raising the bar. There's no question. But, you know, I think you're right. I think he did the Stargates program episode with me on the podcast, on the Paranormal Portal podcast, and it was exceptional. I mean, he did 90 some percent of the legwork on that. And he came in, okay, yep, we're ready to go. And he had sound clips and everything. I'm like, oh my God, all I had to do was show up and hit record, basically. But he's so exceptionally informed and very good at what he does. And he knows, I mean, I suppose it comes from being at the game for so long. Mm-hmm. I don't mean game in a dismissive way, but I mean, it is. There's a formula, there's a recipe to these things. And he's definitely got that recipe figured out and nailed. And he's exceptionally good at it.
I agree. Now I do want to ask, okay, of all the great mysteries and paranormal experiences and stuff that you've talked to people about and you know, you've learned about and just, you know, whatever, what do you think, and I'm not going to hold you to this answer, but what do you think is the first We think the first thing that we're really going to get, other than the UFOs, because I think we kind of have, that we're going to get like to the point where we really know these exist, and the public is going to have to stand up and I'm talking to people that enjoy Expedition Bigfoot, not the people that come, like, they're going to go, wait a second, that is real. Like, all this time we've been making fun of this, and
Sure.
that's something that's happening.
So what your question is what do I think will be the tipping point? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, like for the next thing that is going to, become part of our fabric that everybody's going to have to accept.
Well, here's one of my maybe character flaws. I don't know, maybe not, but one of the things that I really have to emphatically state this is that the reason that I really wanted to do this stuff and this subject matter is because of all the experiences I had. I really want to understand what the hell's going on, because it's just, obviously there's a lot of things happening that aren't recognized by our traditional scientists, and they're not even interested in looking into 90% of this. And that to me seems like a tragedy. And, I'm hoping that paradigm is changing. I think that as a function of what we're doing and the fact that more people are having the conversation, that certainly helps. But here's one of my pet theories about this, and I'll quantify this a little bit as well. So I always postulate and have ideas and ideas about what's going on, what's the nature of this. I think oftentimes we look at all this weirdness and and we view it in the eyes of a victim. Like, well, God, this happens to me. I didn't ask for this. This just happened to me. And I know I really do appreciate that people don't ask for these experiences, and many of them are traumatic. But I don't like the idea that we have no control over them. And I got to thinking, when you think of like thought forms, tulpas, and things like that, we are incredibly powerful at manifesting things. And if you look at the poltergeist phenomena, oftentimes it's attributed to like, pubescent or prepubescent girls, but younger people, usually, not exclusively, but people are somehow subconsciously manifesting things happening around them. Now, I will say this is kind of a really convoluted roundabout way of getting to answer your question. So bear with me, because I'm bringing you on a journey, or at least I'm trying to. In my head, this is making sense. I might sound like an absolute idiot here, so bear with me. But I think that what we're missing in all of this phenomena, is that we are an integral part of our experience, meaning that this stuff doesn't pop out of nothingness, happen to us, and then disappear back into nothingness. And we're like, what happened? I think that on some level, we are helping to facilitate these events. And what I mean by that is, if you look at, for the ghost phenomena, for instance, so commonly children are able to see and have robust conversations with people that the adults are not even aware of. And so it does seem to suggest that there is at least a capacity in these young minds that are wide open, not conditioned by the world, to perceive things. So I think that is always intrinsically a part of us, but life just hammers us into this cone of awareness, whether it's your responsibilities, job, any number of things, family, fixing, mowing, everything just hammers on you, and it keeps you dialed into this little tunnel of existence. Whereas kids are like these wide open, receivers for everything. Now, I was wondering, like, why is that kids have this awareness, and yet at some point, usually it's about 5 to 7 years of age, they suddenly kind of outgrow it, and they don't see these people anymore. They don't have these conversations. A lot of these imaginary friends that are not so imaginary disappear around this age. And it's like, what's going on? And and it was actually on Joe Rogan's podcast that I heard someone talking about it, and it had nothing to do with the paranormal, but he said, from birth to 5 to 7 years old, children's minds are not like adult minds, because kids are in a natural state of theta. Theta state, if you're familiar with this, is also the state of hypnosis. So kids are naturally into this theta state. And then at 5 to 7 years old, their brains start to adjust into the more adult version of the brain, which is a different state. And I don't remember what it is, but it got to me thinking, well, so these kids that are in this natural theta state are wide open and they're experiencing this stuff. And then physiologically, or maybe life, whatever conditions them to shut that down, and they move into the adult type of brain. And then I was thinking about, when you hear things like, okay, Bigfoot melting into nothing. Like I saw a Bigfoot there and it just disapparated and became nothing. And then you hear a very similar thread with aliens. And you see another thread, similar thread in ghosts, full manifestations, and how people are locking eyes with them and just frozen in this moment. And then suddenly they'll blink and then there's nothing there. And I got to thinking, well, maybe when people are in these places, in these states, for whatever reason, we do oftentimes put ourselves into a natural state of hypnosis. Like, for instance, a regular example of us going into natural state of hypnosis is when you're on the drive home and you made this drive a million times and suddenly you realize you're in the driveway. It's like, God, I don't remember getting here. Mm-hmm. That's a natural state of hypnosis. So your mind kind of shifted. You drove home on basically muscle memory and you shifted back out of it. And I was wondering, what if, like, when people are in these experiences, if they weren't somehow naturally bringing themselves into a theta state by relaxation, by, just maybe listening to music. Maybe they're out in the woods just unwinding and everything's melting away. And suddenly an 8-foot tall hairy thing steps out and it's like, oh, and then they see the Bigfoot melt away. But maybe what's happening is that their mental state has changed back into normal. And so their perception melts away. And I kind of like this theory because I think, if anything, it empowers us because it's not things happening to us. It's things happening with us. Like we're helping to facilitate that experience. Now, this is a way out there theory, but it is my personal theory. I haven't heard this from anybody, but I think it stands to reason. Now, I'll tell you a story that really kind of reinforces this from my interview with Ronnie LeBlanc. And he was telling me about this guy that told him a story. And this guy was an absolute rabid believer in Bigfoot, have no doubt they're out there, and took 2 friends, one of which was kind of open to the idea, thought, yeah, there could be something out there, but not really a believer. And then another friend that was absolutely, oh, this stuff's such a bunch of hooey. This is, you're wasting my time. But they went out to an area where there was a lot of sightings, a lot of recent sightings. So they were just going to go look and see if they could see a Bigfoot. And so they went out there, and Ronnie tells the story that, and I'm paraphrasing this, so if I'm not getting all the details right, but I'm getting the important parts right, I think. But Ronnie said that they were walking around for quite a while, and then suddenly, boom, right in front of them steps this huge Bigfoot. And he said that the kid that was the believer saw everything, the hair, the facial features, the way the hands looked, the feet, everything, could see every detail in crystal clarity, and was able to talk about that and illuminate what he saw and experienced to a T. The person who had kind of an open mind but wasn't really a believer saw a silhouette step out that was in the shape of a Bigfoot, but he couldn't make out any details at all. The skeptical person saw absolutely nothing, just saw the path in front of them. Now, this is 3 people in the same place, having the same place, same time, looking the same direction, but 3 very different perceptions of what they experienced. So that does seem to suggest that the individual experiencing it is helping to facilitate the event. So
that sounds like a Chinese parable, like 3 men, I think you're definitely onto something with that line of thinking.
Thanks.
Because I think that, like, you can have, for lack of a better term, you can have tunnel vision to the world.
Yes.
And not see what is going on. And look, we're not going to get political, but we can get political and say that whichever way you believe, you have that tunnel vision, and you are not going to be no matter what evidence is given to you, either side,
Yep.
you just like you see what you want to see,
Right.
and that's it. And you're not going to be swayed either way, no matter what. And so it's not just in the paranormal. I mean, it's in a lot of things in life. People get that way and will not veer off the path they have chosen, because I think it's very uncomfortable to come to the realization that what you truly believe in or don't believe in is real or not, is reality or not reality. And so I think you're totally onto something. And the whole relaxing thing, think about it. If you're out in the woods and you're fishing or you're even hunting or camping, you're not thinking, you're not on your phone, you're not distracted by everyday things. And there's going to be a lot of stuff that you probably are open to that you would not be open to because of outside influences, for sure.
Yes, exactly. And then that certainly these events are life-changing when people do finally see something like this. It's like, boom. And then the interesting thing is after they perceived it once, and I know you've talked to a bunch of people as well, so you probably hear this as well. Like, after I saw this, then I saw this and this and this and this. I'd never seen anything before, but now I can't get away from it. It's everywhere. And it's like this awareness is opened up in our minds after that first experience. It's like breaking the seal at the bar. Once you go, you got to keep going. It's kind of the same thing.
And see, that's why Phil, the producer, wants to have his own segment that says Phil calls BS, because Phil is totally against that idea, because his perception is there's no way that you can, see one thing or experience one thing and then all of a sudden experience all. At the same time, then he's telling me about how his apartment's haunted. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? So
we'll do another segment called Phil's Full of BS.
There you go. See, this is a test to see if Phil listens when he puts the show together.
No offense, Phil. I've never met you, but sound like a guy. But no, I think that it is empowering to think that, hey, because if things are happening to us and it's just beyond our control, then we can only be victims. Mm-hmm. But if we can find out that, look, we're involved in this process, we are facilitating it to some event, that's empowering. And it, the other part of it is, so I don't know if I answered your question even a little bit, but I just thought that was interesting, because I think that knowing that you are an integral part of an experience is a powerful thing, and can maybe help people to maybe release some of the stress of it, maybe help to, understand that, I don't know. I just think.
Well, not only did you, I think, answer the question, you may have the answer to all the questions with that. I mean, because I will go back to the experience that you talked about, like where you were seeing the craft above the trees. Okay.
Right.
Now, and I made a joke about it, but let's be honest. If you go into that, why would you going into a house and locking the door stop an intergalactic or even interdimensional traveler from getting you out of that house?
Right.
And doing so there's a point in that where when I hear these stories where you have to believe that we do have a part in them, in a control factor of, okay, what if I wave to this thing and say, hey, come on, is that what it's waiting on for me to welcome it to come? And I have to be part of this. It just can't, come and, like, you can't, Dracula, you got to invite Dracula in, right? Is that the whole thing?
Black-eyed kids. Yeah.
Yeah. The black-eyed kids too. So I think you're totally, onto something there, that you're right. We don't have to be the victims. We can be the real center of it all, because it is happening. And if we're experiencing it, then we are part of it, right. And you don't have to be, you don't have to run and hide. I'm not saying it's not a bad idea to run and hide from Bigfoot or Dogman, but you don't have to like say, oh my gosh, this is like, well, what's the reason I got to see this?
Right.
Is there a reason? And I I don't know. That's an interesting. I think maybe you just blew a bunch of people's minds.
Well, I hope so. And, if you get back to that situation, and I think it was really divine providence, because I've been looking for years, really wanting to experience that, wanting to see what that was. And if you think about it, I mean, either one of two things is happening. Either some divine providence came over me and said, you're going to be here and you're going to have the right tools so you can experience this, or the aliens wanted me to see them and they were controlling me before I even knew it, but either way, what are the odds that I would be in the mountain cabin up in the middle of nowhere with the one tool that would allow me to see them and just happen to be using it right when they were there, because I'll tell you what, the first thing I did after that trip was get home and go on and order a set. And I had to, bend my credit card. But I was.
So are you saying that Amazon was behind this the whole time? Is that what you're saying? This is all Amazon?
It's a weird marketing attempt, yeah. And it worked.
I got to admit, it's genius.
Yeah.
Like they're up there going, okay, he saw us. Now let's go down to the next cabin and see if we can get them to order.
Do you know what the biggest question that I get from feedback from appearing on shows and talking about that is? I'll get emails and it's always the people going, what model were they? What did you get? What model was it? And the one big thing that I would say to anybody listening, and as far as I know, the model that I have, they don't make anymore. I went and looked for it, and I don't know when they discontinued them, but I can't find them. But they're by a company called Night Owl, and they're night vision binoculars, about 4 or 5 power, generation 1, and they were pretty expensive. I will say that. But one thing that I would suggest to anybody that's thinking of going out there and getting night vision binoculars or night vision, to see the night sky, get something with a recording feature. These didn't have it. And I'm here to tell you, I would have the Patterson-Gimlin film of the UFO world right now if I could hit record. I mean, it would be one of the most incredible UFO videos in existence if I could have had the ability to hit record. But all I can do is tell people this is what I saw.
Well, and I'm going to be honest, if you did record it, there'd be people that say, "Oh, that's this or that's that,"
absolutely.
Which I always find just oh gosh, what a pain.
It is a pain. But, I'll tell you what, I've never had anybody. And of all the people that have messaged me after I shared these stories on different shows, and there's been many that have emailed me. Of all of them, not one person has ever emailed me and said, "Oh, you're so full of crap. You are such a liar." Not one. And I'm really grateful for that because, I've never taken this platform on any of my shows to say you should believe this. I always tell people, look, come to your own conclusions. Just look at what's out there. Look at what we're presenting. Weigh the evidence. If you don't like it, let it go. If you like it, then dive in, go deeper or whatever. It's not about me convincing anybody. None of this is about that. Again, the whole impetus for me doing this is to try to find answers, because of what I've experienced. I've experienced hauntings. I've experienced close call with Bigfoot, many of which I discussed on the first appearance on your show. So if you want to hear that, go back and check that out.
Go way back, start back there, and then come all the way back to the
come back to the present. Yeah,
we need the numbers. Anyway, well, Brett, man, it's always awesome to get to talk to you, and especially I've been on one of your live shows. You've been on one of your live shows. That was a blast. I encourage everybody to go check Brent out. Tell them where they can find you, and then you got a show. You're going to be appearing somewhere. Let's give that place or that show a shout out, and because I know we have listeners in Idaho and in that part, maybe they'll come see you.
Yes. So to get to the appearance part first, once that tab comes up, here we go. It's going to be the 2024 Bigfoot Rendezvous, and it's happening in July. What the hell? They updated their graphic. There it is. July 26th and 27th in Pocatello, Idaho. I'm not a presenter, but I'll be there setting up a table and hopefully introducing people to the show, to the shows. So if you want to come by, please stop by and say hello. I'd love to meet you. But that's in Pocatello, Idaho, July 26th and 27th. The tickets are on sale now. And it's, what is it? Just $30 for both days. And that's going to be happening at 1800 Garrett Way, Pocatello, Idaho. And I hope to see some of you guys there if you can make the journey.
Yeah, if you heard about this from listening to this show, when you stop to see Brent, say, hey, I heard you on the From the Shadows podcast, and thank him for coming on and talking. And Jeff Meldrum's going to be there, right? He's going to be there. Is there anybody else big going to be there?
Michael Freeman, who is just on my latest live podcast. I just interviewed Michael. He's the son of Paul Freeman, who is responsible for the Freeman footage, which is some of the greatest Bigfoot footage out there, right up there with Patterson Gimlin film, in my opinion. But Michael's a great guy. His dad's passed away in 2003, I think. But Michael's kind of championing his dad's legacy now and doing a hell of a job. And he has a book out there called the Freeman Bigfoot Files. And that's available at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, anywhere. And it's a fantastic book. So, but yeah, if you get a chance, you can check out that podcast episode. But to find out more about the Paranormal Portal, head over to paranormalportal.net. And that's the best place because all the social media is linked on there. My YouTube is linked on there. The podcast is linked on there. And I gotta fish in your pond right now. If any of you have experiences, you want to come on my show, there's an interview me button there, and you can click it. It launches my calendar app, and you can pick a date and time that works for you to come on the Paranormal Portal and tell your story. So,
yeah, I would strongly encourage anybody that's got something they want to share, and you're listening to me, but you don't like me well enough to come on and share it. Please go share it with Brent, because and like Brent, I think all these stories are all important to if you think it's insignificant, it's not, it's really not. But Brent, thank you so much for hanging out. It's always great. I mean, I think we could talk stuff. I mean, now I know why you can do 2-hour shows, because an hour and 20 minutes just flew by. But I encourage everybody to go check out the Paranormal Portal, check out the George Noory interview, see if you can sense that Brent is probably nervous and shaking in his boots as he's talking to George. But it's a testament, and I don't care what Brent says, that George Noory would go on his show. Because I don't think George Noory is just going on anybody's show. I mean, he's not texting me. So there must be something there. There must be something there. And all I can hope is Wes was jealous that George Noory went on your show.
He was the first person I told, actually. I was like, wow, check this out. He's like, oh, really? That's cool. Congratulations. So
Wes just acted like, George Noory, who's that? Anyway, so go check out the Paranormal Portal. Paranormalportal.net. You can get links to everything Paranormal Portal. Go support Brent.
Thank you.
Check out his episodes. Like I said, he's got great guests, and he's great to listen to. So thanks again for hanging out.
Oh, thanks for having me, brother. It's always a pleasure. I'll come back anytime you want me.
Okay. Hey, don't worry. I'll take you up on that.
Deal.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the From the Shadows podcast. Until next time, never shy away from the darkness or what may be lurking in the shadows. We are out.
God only knows what's hiding